That's it right there, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're making today. Big, beautiful, puffy biscuits, just the right way. Well, howdy, and welcome back to my kitchen. Hey, this is Texas Cooking Today, and today I'm going to be making some biscuits. Now, these aren't your just ordinary, flat, boring, dense biscuits. Oh, I'm so tired of that. Okay, this is the kind of biscuit that's light, fluffy, has layers, it pulls apart real easy, and it's really incredible. Now, I'm not going to cut them round, I'm going to cut them square. That way, it's just a little faster, a little easier, and it works out great. But what I want to show you is a fantastic recipe to get a buttery, flaky, soft, light, fluffy biscuit that is absolutely off the hook good. Now, this is simple. There's a few little tricks and techniques that you're going to need to know about this, but all in all, the recipe is simple, the method is simple, and it works like a charm. So I'll tell you what, come over, let me show you these ingredients. We're going to get into this. Before we start though, I would like to mention I make my living doing videos like this, also through photography and through selling my recipes. Now, my recipes, those are for sale on my website. And if you think I'm not going to pay for a recipe, hey, you might want to take a look at the recipes before you say no, because the way they're laid out, the way they're created, these aren't just a little block of text in the corner of a page. This is multiple pages of text and information with pictures that'll help you create fantastic recipes. So take a look at that, my other products there. The link is right down below in the description box. Click that. You'll also check out the link for Texas Cooking Today. There's a lot more videos. And let's get into this, because this is what this is about. Come on over. All right, the ingredients that we're going to be using today, it starts with flour, milk, lard, butter, baking powder, and salt. That's all there is to it. Flour, milk, lard, butter, baking powder, salt. Now I have a little extra butter here. If you want to have some extra butter to brush over the top of them, oh, that's just a wonderful thing to have. And you might want to have a little extra flour sitting to the side so that when you go rolling these out, it makes it easier to work. We'll see about that in a minute. Now, anytime I'm going to be doing something like this, where I'm rolling out biscuits or whatever, I set up an area to work. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I have a special board that is designed just for pastry work, all right? And whenever you see colored boards, different colors mean different things. So when it comes to commercial cooking, that white board is for dairy and for doing bakery stuff, pastries and things like that. Now, these things will sometimes slide around on you. So I'm going to recommend that we go ahead, let me prop this up on my foot here. There we are. I'm just going to go ahead and lay down a towel on that surface. When I put this on there, look at that, keeps it from moving around, keeps it stable, and makes life just so much better. So do yourself that favor. Okay. Now, this is simple enough. Let me get my flour in here. Now, when you're doing this, and this is a fresh stick of butter. It's fresh from the refrigerator, so it's still nice and firm. You do not want butter or lard that's that hot. Well, lard can be at room temperature and it's still fairly firm. But butter, you don't want it to be at room temperature. You want that butter to be nice and cold. There we go. You notice I'm just cutting it into a lot of little teeny tiny pieces, and this is kind of important. When we go making our dough, we want to break the fats, this butter and the lard, into smaller pieces in the flour. And that's what we call cutting in. We use a pastry blender. It's a little device like this. Now, mine is old. It's like antique, all right? The new ones look really cool. They're modern, but they're still very inexpensive. This should just be something that you have in your kitchen. get you a pastry blender. So what we do, go ahead, combine our baking powder, that salt. I use that pastry blender just to kind of mix that in. We're going to go ahead and get our fat in here, that lard. Oh yeah. And then our butter. I'll tell you what, come take a look in this. You can see exactly what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and what it does, okay? Okay, now you get a better view down in this. So I've got my lard, my fat in there. The butter's in there. Now watch, I'm just gonna go and take this and use the tines to slice right through the butter. So I get these little thin slices of it now. And I'm gonna keep doing that to all of it, to the fat, to the butter. When it clings to this, just knock it off, okay? Now the whole idea here is to create thin layers of dough and fat. And what happens there, when we create thin layers of dough and fat, we end up with flaky, with those little thin layers that want to come apart while you're eating them. And it's wonderful. It's a great texture. And the thing of it is the lesson I've learned about this, a couple of things. Number one, keep your lard and your butter as cold as possible for the job. You don't have to freeze them, just keep them cold, you know, like refrigerator cold. Now what that does is it helps them to break into smaller pieces and not to melt during this process. You want a solid piece of fat in between the layers of dough. You could say it that way. Now, in a way, it's not all dissimilar from making a puff pastry. If you know some of the pieces I have in there, they're still fairly large. Don't let that bother you, because that creates a really good quality. Now, too large like that is just too big, but big pieces are just fine. And as you've seen, if you get your hands in there, you can do this by hand too. Okay, it can be done. So there we have it. There's a piece of lard that's big. And what this does is when it creates those layers, you have a piece of butter or lard in between two pieces, or surrounded rather by dough, and then it fries that dough around it and creates that kind of a layered effect, because the dough above it and the dough underneath it don't grow together. They just are separated by that fried piece inside of there. So that's how that works. Anyway, I need to get my milk in here, get it all stirred together. Hey, here we go. Not so tough, is it? Now, if you've noticed, I didn't overwork any of this. I didn't put too much time in cutting in the fats. I didn't put too much time into mixing it together. It's all kind of a lumpy mess. That's okay. It's all about to come together. All right. This is not hard. See what I'm doing? Just kind of roughly shaping it. So what I'm looking for here is to turn this into a rectangle. I want it to be about 8 inches wide, which is just a little wider than this. This is about 7 inches wide and about 16 inches long. So about like this. This by this. And then we're going to cut out our biscuits. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not really interested in making round biscuits. All right? It's kind of takes longer, all right? And frankly, I don't think they're any better. Okay, so there. Now, what I want to do here, we want to do this so we create layers, all right? And here's where the layering begins. I'm going to take my pastry knife. These things are great. You don't have to have them. You can use a regular knife. But this, you can just slide straight down. You get good even cutting. It works great. Now, see what I did? Nothing pretty. All right. Pretty basic, wasn't it? Now, there we go. We're going to do it again. Here. Flip this over. Here. There we go. Put him up here. I'm getting a little sticky on my board. That's not a big thing. You just need a little more flour. So you can see how this rectangle is forming now. It's actually taking on shape, isn't it? We're doing this one more time. And look, you can already see layers are being created here, multiple. All right, now, time for a little more flour. I'm trying to get everything mashed together on these edges real nice before I finish rolling it out in its final shape, which is coming up. Okay, so here we are, taking this to its final rollout. All right, so we're about there. Now the thing of it is, I don't want these to be too, let's see, thick. I don't want them to be too thin either. I'm looking for about 3/4 of an inch, and that's about what I've got. Now here's where this knife comes in handy. When you're making biscuits, whether they're round ones or square ones, cut your biscuits, all right? Just like I'm doing with a fairly sharp edge. A cookie cutter works real nice, but when you have the raw edge like this, it doesn't come out quite as pretty, all right? And this gives you that nice sharp edge that rises up good and pretty. And that's our extra biscuit right back there. So here, cut these into 4 parts on each side. And there's our biscuits. These are ready to be baked, and that happens at 450 degrees. So you might want to start heating your oven. These can go directly onto the pan just as they are. And what do you do with that leftover stuff? It's not a problem. You just take it, press it down, there's your biscuit. All right, very simple. Now, let's move on to the next step. Those biscuits need a little treat. Okay, our oven is preheating. It's going to be a few minutes before it's ready. While it's heating, I went ahead and melted a little bit of butter. And I've got enough butter here really to do a lot of biscuits, so it's okay. It's going to be used later on. And you can always re-refrigerate butter. It'll set right back up. And it's still great to use. You can also boil it. I'm a little bit shy of that here, and get you some clarified butter. I love doing stuff like this to pastries. It just sets them off, gives them that extra little slightly salty bite. And this is a salted butter, so if you're curious, yes it is. Now also, I mentioned to you the difference between cut edges and raw edges on the biscuits. Okay, so here you have both combined. We have some edges that are still quite raw that didn't get a full cut, like here and around here, back here. And it's going to allow you to see the difference between how the sharp edged cuts rise up and come full versus how those that aren't, and how they'll be kind of pinched and pulled back on that edge. It's a little different, but it's a cool lesson anyway. So anyway, I thought I'd do that for you. My oven is up to temperature. These are all cut and ready to go. 450 degrees, takes about 10 minutes. Keep an eye on them. You don't want them to burn, all right? That's also dependent on your altitude, 10 to 15 minutes usually. And how moist you've made the biscuits, and the barometric pressure that day, the temperature, the humidity. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of variables. Roughly 10 minutes to 15. Keep an eye on it. That's about it. You might want to consider something to go with it. And I'm doing another show for creamed beef. Oh man, that's good. And that's what I was planning on putting on these. Take a look at that also. We're going to look at these in just a minute when they're finished cooking. But right now, I want you to take a look at the ingredients quantities, the quantity of everything that we've used to pull off this delicious dish. Now the quantity of the ingredients that we use today, let's start right here. Our flour, 4 cups of flour, that's just an all-purpose flour. 1.5 cups of milk. This is a 1/2 cup of lard, a 1/2 cup of butter, that's 1 stick. We have 4 teaspoons of baking powder and a 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Now if you want a little extra butter, do that. I just broke out a few tablespoons here to melt in the microwave that I brushed over the top. And of course a little flour that makes it easy to roll it out, as you've seen. So let's take a look at what the final product looks like. Our biscuits out of the oven. Okay, let's take a look at our biscuits. It has been about 13 minutes. Oh, and look at that. Look at those big boys splitting down the middle. Oh, they're looking good. But that pan, ooh, ouch, 450 degree pan, it's hot. So I'm gonna let it sit there, but also if you wanted right now, this is the time where you can take more of that butter, brush it on them. Oh, you know what you're doing? You're just doing your appetite a big favor by giving it a little extra boost, right? Oh yeah, those are beautiful. Look at those beautiful biscuits. Oh, I can't wait to try one. Maybe with a little honey. Ooh, or better yet, some gravy. Oh yeah. That's what we're going for. Oh yeah, I've been wanting to open up one of these little gems. You remember earlier I mentioned that they just build those beautiful layers and they're all over it. And when you pull it apart, nothing's more readily available. And these pieces back here, they're gonna flake up the exact same way. I mean, like that. Look at that. Beautiful, light, flaky, layered biscuits. This is the way to go. Oh man. You know one of my favorites? There we go. A little bit of clover honey. Mmm. Mmm. Tender, flaky, buttery, absolutely delicious. Nice and crusty on the outside. Oh, folks, try this recipe. You're gonna love this recipe. The technique works. The recipe is delicious. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching. Please, description box, check out those links. Do me a favor and drop a comment below. A thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Tell a few people about my channel. And folks, you have a good day. I most certainly will.